Hey everybody, this is Kelsey Dion from the Arcane Library, and we're back today with episode 2 of our SoloDark sessions. Okay, where we last left off, we had our dwarf priest, Torson, and we had a human witch, Lienna, who were camping out in some ruins in the wilderness. They confronted a strangler-type creature that ambushed them, and then the next day set off into the wilderness in search of some location that Torson is being drawn to instinctively. We've established that there is some kind of issue with the world where magic is becoming troubled. Spellcasters are having a harder time casting and keeping their spells, and even Torson has an issue where in the last session he critically failed a spell, and now that spell is permanently more difficult for him to cast. So he and Lienna have come together out of fate to try to seek a solution to this problem. Lienna and Torson are headed through the forest right now together. They've just woken up a few hours ago and they are moving towards their objective. We determined last time that they were pretty far away from where they're trying to go. So today we're going to see how much progress they can make and whether they can come upon what they're searching for. Last time we sorted out that what they're looking for is a place called the Forge of the Crystalline Ancestor, which is a random dungeon name that we generated using the SoloDark rules. Today we're going to do a little bit of a hex crawl, and we're going to be using some simplified hex crawling rules that I'm going to be sharing out soon. And we're first going to have to determine how far do Lienna and Torson have to go, and through what kind of terrain are they going to be moving. So for that first question, how far do they have to go? I think we're gonna have to generate a random number of hexes that they'll need to cross. Now, if it was a close distance, I would probably roll 1d6 perhaps and say it's that many hexes. And if it was a somewhat nearby distance, I'd do 2d6. But the Oracle told us last time that they're pretty dang far from where they're trying to get. So I'm gonna roll 3d6 and we're gonna say that's the number of hexes that they need to get through before they can find their objective. I've got 2 right here, so I'll roll these both and then add 1 more. Oh no. I already rolled the maximum. Oh my gosh, 17 hexes they have to get through. If only I could roll like that for character creation. They have to traverse 17 hexes. Now, according to our normal hex crawling rules, a hex is 6 miles across. So 17 times 6 is quite a distance. I think that's 102 miles, so that's quite a hike. So right now they're in a forest setting, and so I'm gonna classify that as difficult terrain, meaning they can't just go at full speed through it, they have to pick their way carefully through. So that means that they're gonna be able to move 2 hexes a day, unless they decide to rush, which is called pushing. I think they might be inclined to push their speed since they're in a bit of an urgent situation. They don't have a ton of rations between them left, and there's a serious problem in the world they're trying to fix. So I think today, Torson and Lienna are going to choose to push through as many hexes as they can get through in this forest setting. That does increase their chance of random encounters because they're speeding along and not being as careful, but it lets them move twice as fast as they normally would. So they're going to move 4 hexes to the north today, and they're going to have to make 2 random encounter checks, basically every other hex they enter. And they have a 2 in 6 chance instead of a 1 in 6 chance for a random encounter. But before we even get to that, I want to check how the weather is doing today. So for that, I'm going to roll a d6. We got a 4, which is a pretty average result, nothing extreme. So today is going to be a pretty temperate, seasonable day. They're in the summer, so it's going to be slightly breezy and warm, but not overpowering, and they won't have the weather hindering them in their travel. So they move through this dark forest together, not speaking a ton, but carefully checking their path and keeping an eye on each other to make sure neither trips over a root. Torson, once in a while, will help Lienna scramble up the embankment, and here and there, Lienna will take this little mouse out of her pocket and whisper to it. Torson watches from a few steps back with an eyebrow raised, but doesn't say anything, and Lienna will lower the mouse down to the ground every here and there and have it scamper off. After a few minutes, it returns and whispers something back into her ear. So by midday, we're gonna make our encounter check. Whew, a 5, okay, we're safe. So if we got a 2 or a 1, we'd have a random encounter. The morning and the afternoon go by somewhat uneventfully. And after a few hours of travel where this mouse keeps darting back and forth, Torson finally can't stand the suspense anymore, and even his dwarven patience and gruffness starts to crumble. And he looks at Lienna and goes,
I must ask, Lienna, I hope it's not an intrusion, but you seem to be talking to a mouse.
Lienna raises her eyebrows and chuckles. Oh, you've noticed, I see. Well, yes, this is my mouse, Rosalind. And she holds the mouse up towards Torson, and to his incredible shock, Rosalind says in a very clear voice, Hello, Torson! His eyes go wide and he nods and stumbles out a reply.
Well met, Mouse Rosalind. Intriguing.
Lienna laughs and tucks Rosalind back into her pocket. And she turns to Torson and says, Rosalind's been giving me an idea of what we can expect around here. So far, we haven't seen anything of concern in the forest, but you never know, especially after that creature who attacked us last night. I figured it would be best to every so often send her out to check on our behalf and see if maybe we can avoid being ambushed this time. And so off they go through the forest again until the sun starts to set. Eventually, they find a place to make camp, striking a small campfire, and they're going to have their last ration for dinner, and Torson is going to take the first watch. I'm going to make their last random encounter check for the day at this point. Uh-oh, this is what they get for rushing. So they have triggered a random encounter. And what I'm going to do here is consult with the SoloDark prompts table about what the nature is of this random encounter. We've got to roll 2d100 and we'll take the green result first. So that's start danger. Pretty scary result. It sounds like they've stumbled upon something bad. And now I want to ask the Oracle, is this start danger something like a creature? As far as the odds go, I think we have basically a 50-50 shot. This either could or could not be a creature, so I'm just going to roll one 20-sided die. Oh my gosh, we got a 10, which is neither a yes or a no. It's actually a twist. This is a kind of rare result on the Oracle table. So when we get a twist, we're going to roll another prompt to see what its nature is, and it means something unexpected happens. All right, green will go first again. Secure unknown. Okay, so when we combine the two prompts that we got, we had start danger and we have secure unknown. So I think this means that they're beginning to get into the zone of effect where the dangerous things they're pursuing are beginning to become noticeable in the landscape around them. That's what it means by start danger. But secure unknown also means we have an opportunity here to learn something about this danger. So I don't necessarily think this is a creature or something we'd ordinarily expect for a random encounter, especially because we got a twist. I think this is something like an obelisk that's a little bit risky to mess around with, but might give them some information. So, as Torson and Lienna are approaching a clearing that they feel would make a good campsite, and the sun is beginning to set behind the trees, casting the forest into a shadowed darkness, they see an obelisk looming out of the earth, sticking at a slightly unnatural angle as the ground has shifted around it over the many, many centuries it must have been here. They cautiously approach it, Lienna making sure Rosalind is safe and secure in her pocket. Torson speaks first.
A carved stone, an obelisk it is.
And his dwarven stone sense and knowledge about such things causes him to drift a little bit closer than might be wise. Lienna keeps a cautious distance with her hands crooked, ready to cast a spell as Torson examines this obelisk. He sees that it's covered in ruins, but not in a language that he can understand.
Lienna, can you make any sense of these ruins?
He says. She leans slightly closer to get a better look. Now, Lienna speaks an awful lot of languages, so I'm going to ask the Oracle if she can understand what it says. I'm going to say it's likely since she speaks really a lot of languages. Our high result is a 13, so that means yes, but it's also an odd number, so it means yes, but. So I'm going to interpret this as yes, she can read it, but a lot of the runes are faded beyond recognition. I also want to sort out what language it's actually in. So there are 3 languages that she speaks that Torson does not, which is Reptilian, Sylvan, and Diabolic. So I'm just going to roll a d6 and see which one it is. On a 1 to a 2, we'll say Reptilian, 3 to 4 is Sylvan, and 5 to 6 is Diabolic. So it's written in Sylvan.
It's written in the language of the forest spirits. I can understand some of what it says, but it looks like a lot of it is faded.
And she steps even closer. Torson turns and, eyeing this obelisk, tries to brush some of the moss aside, and his fingers trace over some of the letters. So suddenly this burst of greenish light fills the clearing, and we see the obelisk, which was covered in stone, start to melt away into a crystalline shape. And suddenly standing before them is this amber crystal etched with these runes, and a strobe of light pulses out from it and blasts over our 2 characters. I'm going to have them each make a constitution check to remain standing through this wave of energy. We've got Torson at a -1 on this die, and Lienna is at a +2 on the green die. I'm going to put it at a DC of 15, which is a difficult or hard DC. Lienna manages to pass the check, but Torson doesn't, so he gets blasted right in the chest with this strobe of energy that, whoom, crashes out through the forest. And he falls and tips over, paralyzed and writhing in pain. Lienna, meanwhile, somehow manages to slide around this blast of energy, and it doesn't hit her directly in the face, and she is okay. Torson's gonna take a D6 of damage. Ooh, only 1, so he doesn't hurt himself too badly, but he's also going to be paralyzed as a result of this for a D4 rounds. 3 rounds. Lienna runs over to where Torson's been thrown on his back, and he's laying there, groaning in pain and trying to move, but finding that his muscles are all locked up. And Lienna bends over, "Torson, are you okay? Torson!" and she's shaking him. In the meantime, something has changed about the forest. The forest is now floating with twinkling amber motes of light, some kind of residual magic that came from this crystalline obelisk that stands before them. Lienna turns, her eyes drawn towards its glowing light, and as these motes flash all around her, she can see clearly now that the obelisk has something written on it that she can read. It says, "Let this be the marker of the barrier. Travel no farther, for you enter the realm of the forge. 3 days north lies this place of woe, yet its influence can be felt from here forward." So Lienna takes some time to read this, and once she's done looking over it, below her, Torson is finally starting to come around. His joints are unlocking, and he groans and lifts himself up on his elbows. "What was that?" he says in pain. Lienna quickly helps him to his feet, and they get out of this clearing back into the forest. She says, "I read what was on the obelisk," and explains to him what it said. And Torson nods in understanding. "Well, at least we're on the right path. That said, we'll need to find somewhere for the night to rest. It's getting dark, and this forest is dangerous. Come, let's continue, and we'll find another place to strike camp." So they head off into the forest, Torson trying to disguise his limp where he bashed his leg when he was thrown to the ground. They eventually do find a place to make camp, and they strike up their little campfire, and they'll have to take turns on watch for the evening. All right, I'm going to check for 2 more random encounters overnight, 1 on each turn of watch. So the green die will be Lienna's watch, and the yellow die will be Torson's. Remember, because they pushed, that they are going to have a 2 in 6 chance instead of a 1 in 6 chance of a random encounter this evening. Thankfully, the night is uneventful and they don't come across anything and nothing comes across them. So they rest and wake up the following morning. Torson has regained the hit point he lost, and so our team goes marching once again into the forest. They're going to push again because they want to travel as fast as possible, and so they're going to be traveling 4 hexes today on foot, but at an increased risk of random encounters. I want to check and see if the terrain remains the same for them as they travel, so to do that, I'm actually going to use the Overland Hex Maps generator from ShadowDark RPG. This is on page 132 of the core rulebook. There's a 2d6 table where you can see if the terrain changes at all, and so I'm going to roll that and we'll see if we get a shift to our terrain. I got a 5, which means the terrain doesn't change, so they're going to be traveling through forest for the rest of the day. Let's do a check for random encounters. Again, it's going to be on a 2 out of 6 chance for both. Ooh, so during the early part of the day, they trigger 1 random encounter. So this is in the morning half of the day. This time, instead of using the oracle and the prompts table to figure out what the random encounter is, I want to try a different technique that you can also use if you want, which is just rolling on a random encounter table. ShadowDark RPG Core has a random encounter table for pretty much every terrain type you could think of. And so I'm just going to roll one up on the forest table and see what we get. So 55, that is a catgut wire triggers a wide falling net hidden above. So they've stumbled into a trap. Oh no, so I'm gonna have them each make a dexterity check to try to jump out of the way of this trap. Lienna gets +1 and Torson gets +2 on his roll. And I'm gonna set it again at a DC 15 because I don't think they were really looking up or being super alert for threats coming from above, especially not a trap. I think they were more thinking there could be a monster of some sort. Here we go. Oh no, they both fail. So this net falls from above, falling down on them and pinning them both to the ground underneath it. This isn't good. I think now we have to ask the Oracle, did whoever set this trap hear it or become aware of the fact that it triggered? I think it's a 50-50 shot because most of the time a net trap is like a game trap, and so I don't think that whoever set it is necessarily waiting around for it to go off. I think they tend to come and check it pretty occasionally. So let's see what happens. No, but we got an odd number, but it's below 9. So no, whatever set this trap doesn't know it went off, but it's going to be around soon to check. I'm gonna set a timer on this because that'll make things interesting. We'll say in 1d4 rounds, whatever set this trap will be arriving to come check on it. 4 rounds, so we have a little bit of time to try to get out. All right, and rather than play out each and every round, which is basically trying to take 4 of the same action in a row, I'm gonna say because Lienna and Torson have 4 full rounds, the most amount of time they could have gotten, whatever attempt they make to escape from this net will ultimately be easy, so it'll be a DC 9. So I'm gonna make 1 check and see if they both or one or neither can escape from this net. Torson gets a +2 on this and Lienna gets a +1, and they'll have to equal or exceed a 9 to pass. Oh, that was close. They both barely passed, so they managed to wriggle their way out of this net just before whatever it is who set the trap arrives. And now I think this is where we want to ask a prompt. What is the nature of the thing that set this trap? Evolve chaos. Evolve chaos. Well, chaos is never good, so this is probably going to be something whose goal is to forward chaos or evolve it. So it's probably a bad creature, but it would also be an intelligent creature if it can set a net. So I think I have an idea of what this thing is. Or rather, things, because I think we have come upon a goblin trap. Torson and Lienna wriggle out of this trap and get to their feet just as they hear snapping branches and twigs, and they hear the marching sound of a group of voices chattering in a language neither of them understand, but both of them recognize. Torson's eyes fly open and he pulls his warhammer free. "I'd recognize the voice of a goblin anywhere," he says. "Quickly, Lienna, we have to take cover." And so they dart off behind a tree, trying to find shelter from the goblins that are just about to reach them. I had to turn some lights on. It was starting to get a little dark in here. Anyway, we have these goblins coming into the clearing, and they're chattering amongst themselves as they stroll up to this net and then stop looking down at it, looking down at the earth that has been torn up as Lienna and Torson tried to escape. And suddenly they lower themselves down, sniffing at the air. These goblins come into the clearing. There are 4 of them, and there's one bigger one that's carrying a big mace. But strangely, the mace is made out of an amber-like crystal, and it's glowing with a sort of inner radiance. Goblins have keen senses, so they can't be surprised, but that doesn't mean that Torson and Lienna can't hide from them. So I'm gonna make a dexterity check for both of them to see if they can both successfully hide from these goblins. I'm gonna put it at a DC 15, a difficult maneuver, because they didn't have a lot of time to get set up, and these goblins are in familiar territory. Both of them failed to hide successfully, so the goblins turn and then immediately point in their goblinish language as they indicate where Torson and Lienna are hiding. So we're immediately going to be jumping into a combat. We're going to roll for initiative. Remember that we use side-based initiative in SoloDark, so I'm going to be rolling the best initiative check for my characters and then the best check for the goblins, and whoever wins, their whole team gets to go. We'll put the goblins on the yellow and we'll put us on green. We get +2 and they get +1. Oh, we beat them on the initiative, which is good because this is a bad situation. Lienna's gonna jump out from behind the tree where she's hiding and point a finger at one of these weaker goblins, trying to summon the Willow Man spell to terrify it away. She gets +4. Oh no, she rolled a natural 1. This is not good. So this means that she's going to have a misfire. Normally, I would say this is bad, but I have a luck token for each of the characters that I have been holding back, so I'm going to try to make use of it here. There goes Lienna's luck token, and I'm going to have her re-roll this critical spellcasting check right here. A 17 plus her bonuses, she definitely succeeds. So she summons a terrifying, tall, willowy, pale being into this goblin's mind, and it sees this being looming up behind Lienna as if it's really there. And it drops its weapon in abject fear and scrambles off screaming into the forest. Torson, for his part, is going to jump out from behind his tree with his warhammer and swing it down at one of these goblins' heads. He gets +4 on this attack and does a d10 damage if he hits. Oh, he definitely hits, and he smashes this goblin in one mighty blow, knocking it into the dirt and ending its life in a flash. But now it's the goblins' turn, and they're not at half their numbers yet, so they don't have to make a morale check. They're going to turn, and 2 of them are going to attack Torson, and the leader is going to jump forward and attempt to strike Lienna. Let's do Torson first. The goblins get +0 on their attack, and he has an arm class of 13. Ooh, 1 hit him. He's going to take a d4 damage. Ouch, he takes 2 damage as 1 clonks him in the face. What's even scarier is this goblin boss who's now running out to attack Lienna, and he lifts his giant glowing club and brings it down at her. Her armor class is 12, and he gets +3 on this attack. Oh, that is very lucky indeed. He got a 9 total, so she manages to slip out of range just as he's bringing his club down to strike. All right, so we're going to roll for initiative again. We've got our goblins on yellow, and we've got our team on green. Oh, thank goodness. We get the initiative pretty decisively here. So Lienna is going to step back and point her finger at this goblin, and she's going to cast Eye Bite at it. So if she succeeds, he's going to take a d4 damage, and suddenly he won't be able to see her. 7, that's pretty close. What does she get? +4. So that's an 11. That's just barely enough to succeed at casting this spell. So this goblin boss takes 3 damage, and Lienna is suddenly invisible as if she weren't even there, and he can't see her. He looks around in total confusion. Meanwhile, Torson's going to try to take out another one of these goblins with his warhammer. He rolls a natural 1 as well. I think this is a situation in which I'm going to have him use his solitary luck token as well. Otherwise, this battle is looking like it's going to really turn against them. Cashing it in. All right, we've got a reroll. Oh, that's a 14 and 10 damage. So that was well worth the luck token. Torson turns and with a double-handed swing just clonks directly through this other goblin's face, knocking its helmet flying and crushing its skull completely. That was a crucial downing of a goblin right there, because now on their turn, the goblins are going to need to check their morale since they're below half their number. The goblin boss is going to use his wisdom bonus, which is the highest, of +0, and they're looking for a 15 on this check. They fail. So the goblin boss yells out a command to his only remaining recruit here, and they fall back into the forest, fading away into the tree line. Torson and Lienna turn and look at each other with their shoulders heaving from exertion and fear, and Lienna says, "So, there are goblins in these woods, hey?" Torson spits on the ground. "What place doesn't have goblins these days?" And as he goes to wipe his warhammer off in the grass, Lienna puts a finger to her chin, thinking, "What was that crystalline object that goblin was holding, I wonder?" she says. "It looked almost exactly like the material that obelisk was made from, didn't it?" Torson says. "Could it have something to do with this forge we seek?" "It very well could. I suppose we only have one way to find out, don't we? We'll have to continue forward and keep extra caution now that we know there are goblins around." And so they turn and hastily head off through the forest before those goblins get their nerve back and try to return. The last thing I'm going to have each of them do today is roll an intelligence check for foraging, which is something that they can do during the day as they travel. And this is to see if they can find anything that could serve as a ration. The forest is a place with pretty abundant natural resources, and so I'm going to make this a normal check, a DC 12. It's neither too hard nor too easy. +1 for Lienna and +0 for Torson. Wow, they both succeed, and we got a critical success. We rolled a 20. That is good news in more than one way. First of all, Torson gets his luck token back because he rolled a 20. Not a moment too late, because we really needed that last time around. It really saved our behinds, so I'm glad Torson has his luck token back. And also, I'm gonna say he finds twice as many rations as he would normally. So he finds 2, and Lienna also succeeded and found 1. So they're not gonna have to go hungry tonight. All right, we're gonna check for their random encounters overnight. We've got 1 more random encounter. They've really had bad luck on this. So overnight on Torson's portion of the watch, something happens. What could it be? I'm gonna roll on the forest random encounters table. 70. That is a rabid, frothing direwolf staggers into sight and growls. So here we have the campfire with Lienna asleep and Torson on watch. He's staring into the darkness, clutching his warhammer a bit more tightly than he normally would, especially after the amount of danger that he and Lienna have faced over the last 2 days. Suddenly, there's a terrible snarling and low growl as this wolf steps out of the night into the campfire's light. A rabid direwolf is definitely hostile. I don't think I need to roll a reaction check, so we're gonna have to see who gets the initiative here. Ooh, a direwolf's a really dangerous enemy. It gets +2 to its dexterity, just like Torson, so this is a flat roll-off. Oh no, it gets the initiative, so it's going to charge forward, trying to bite Torson. It gets 2 attacks at +4. Torson's armor class is only 13. Oh my gosh, it hits him with 1 of its bites. He's gonna take a D8 damage. Remember, he's down 2 hit points from that fight with the goblins. Oh no, Torson goes down to 0 hit points as this wolf lunges at him and sinks its fangs into his leg, shaking him and throwing him to the ground, and he knocks his head and falls unconscious. This is certainly enough ruckus to wake Lienna up, so she springs to her feet, totally groggy and surprised. Lienna doesn't have much she can do in the way of spells against this creature, but she is familiar with the wilds, and she knows that all natural creatures fear fire to some capacity. All right, Lienna's gonna make a dangerous gambit here, and she is going to try to take a risky action here by pulling a flaming brand out of the campfire and thrusting it in the wolf's face and trying to scare it away, trying to trigger some kind of primal fear that still exists in its rabid brain. I'm gonna put this at a hard check, a DC 15 charisma check for Lienna to try to scare this thing off, because it's no easy thing to scare off a wolf, but she does know a pretty good idea of how to go about it. All right, here we go. We gotta get a 15. Lienna gets +4. She's got a really high charisma, so we have a chance here. All right, fingers crossed. Oh! She got a natural 20 on this. Oh my gosh, so that means she gets her luck token back. Wow, here we go. She really needed that victory, and she somehow manages to trigger a primal fear inside of this wolf with her dangerous gambit here. And the fire causes its eyes to widen. It shrieks and whines in fear, and it slinks back to the edge of the firelight, cowering away from her torch. Ooh boy, we really needed that. All right, now she's wielding a torch, and she's gonna stand protectively over Torson, holding this torch out, and she sees it reflecting in the greenish eyes of this wolf that's lurking around in fear at the edge of the firelight. And she is going to do her best to try to save Torson's life because he is dying. Let's see how many rounds Torson has. We're gonna roll a d4 and add his constitution bonus, which is actually a -1. He has 3 rounds for Lienna to attempt to save his life. That means she gets 3 attempts to stabilize him, which is a DC 15 intelligence check to staunch his bleeding. I think she plants that torch in the dirt right in front of Torson to give her light and to keep that wolf at bay, and then she goes about trying to stop him from bleeding out. Here's her first check. Oh my goodness, she succeeds on her first check. So fortunate, because Torson was really at risk of dying here. She manages to bind up his wounds, every so often glancing up at the greenish, flickering eyes of this wolf where it stands at the clearing's edge. Torson and Lienna surely get no rest for the remainder of the night as she continues to try to ward off this lurking wolf with her flaming brand while keeping an eye on Torson, who is in a very touch-and-go state. Dawn breaks and drives this wolf into the deeper shadows of the forest where it can hide. Lienna is able to give Torson a little bit of water and feed him some of his ration, although neither of them got rest successfully tonight, so I'm going to rule that neither of them recover any hit points they lost, or any spells for that matter, although I don't think they've lost any. The last thing I need to do is I'm going to roll a check to see if Torson contracts the disease that this wolf had. We're going to have this be a constitution check, which is at a -1 for Torson, and I'm going to put it at a DC 12. Can his body fight off this rabbit disease? He just barely made it. Wow, he made it right on the nose with a 12 total, so he manages to not contract this horrible rabid-type disease that this wolf had, but still he's at 0 hit points. And I think he and Lienna are going to have to lose a day of travel to spend the day recovering. There will be no travel this day, but then they only have a chance of 2 random encounters on a 1, which is a lot better than a 2 or 1 because they're not trying to travel swiftly through the forest here. We'll roll that up and see how they do. They are very fortunate and managed to maintain camp without being encroached upon or attacked again. And I will say they spend the entire day resting, and then we'll roll again for 2 more checks in the evening, by which point they'll be starting to feel better. Here we go, 2 more checks. So no random encounters overnight either. They were very lucky and able to spend a day in recovery. And Lienna actually forgoes eating a ration, the last one they have, so that she can give it to Torson and nurse him back to health. What an eventful few days of travel in the forest. So we're gonna see one more time if the terrain changes on them at all. We're looking at page 132 of Shadowdark Core. And we got a 4, which is the same as the current terrain. So they are still in the forest. I can't wait to escape this abominable forest, Torson says the next day as they trudge along, him still limping a bit from all of the wounds he's accumulated. And they continue forward, pushing to move as quickly as they can. Let's check and see the weather. I don't think we've checked the weather the last day or 2, so let's see if the weather changes at all. No, the weather is actually increasingly nice. It's becoming very temperate and cool. It is no longer super hot, and they are able to travel somewhat comfortably through the forest today. Let me make some random encounter checks for them. On a 2, they're gonna have an encounter. No encounters during the day, so they managed to travel along safely this time and find another place to strike camp. Now let's check for their overnight encounters as well. Ooh, very fortunate. They managed to spend an uneventful night. They really needed that, I think. And I want to see if throughout the day either of them was able to find a ration. Got our DC 12 intelligence checks here. Wow, they both actually managed to find a ration, so they will eat that overnight, and they are going to be fresh and ready to go the following day. And that's where we will pick up next time as our characters are reaching the end of their journey. We will see what happens when they find their destination, and we'll have to learn what occurs as they approach the Forge of the Crystalline Ancestor. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next episode of our SoloDark adventure. See you all soon.